All right. Greetings and blessings, everybody. I hope you are well. I certainly wouldn't wish you ill. Today, we're going to have a little bit of fun. Some of the topics we are going to be discussing in this video are Heidegger and technology and science. We're going to be talking about Prometheus. We're going to be talking about angels and demons and powers and principalities. We're going to be talking about symbolism and the fall of man. And we're going to be bringing up some ideas from the Book of Enoch. And we're going to be working through these ideas, looking at a couple of videos. The first one is a discussion that was just released by Jeffery Mishlove in his New Thinking Aloud podcast, where he interviewed Jason Reza Jorjani, the philosopher. He wrote this book, Prometheus and Atlas, and a few others. He's got this idea of a Promethean revolution that is necessary to save humanity. Now, I don't know about that idea. I like his ideas in Prometheus and Atlas, but we're going to kind of juxtapose the ideas of what technology is, what is the essence of technology through the work of Martin Heidegger, and what is technology with regards to the patristic Eastern Orthodox teachings, and also what is technology using the framework of Jonathan Paguea and his symbolism, where he really refines and distills kind of the patristic and Eastern Orthodox teachings in a very palpable, interesting, and compelling way. So we'll get started here. We're going to first look through the video with Jason Reza Jorjani. They're going to be bringing up Heidegger's idea of technology. What is the essence of technology? Some books that they'll be talking about are Being in Time, of course, Martin Heidegger's kind of magnum opus. And if you want to dig in deeper into Heidegger's idea of technology, so obviously the book, The Question Concerning Technology, and other essays by Martin Heidegger. But we're going to get started here with the video, where, interestingly, starting off, they talk about how Heidegger situated the idea of science not as presupposing technology, but actually reversing this operation where technology actually presupposes, come first, and it situates science, and science is an outgrowth of technology, which is an interesting perspective here. So let me see if I can share my screen and we can get started here. Again, of course, if you guys like my videos, please like and subscribe and share. That really helps. All right, let's go here. Oops, make sure this computer sound is on. It should be. All right, any day now. All right, so here we go.
Iranian, Leviathan, and most recently, Prometheism. Once again, this is an internet interview, and now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Jason. It's a pleasure to see you once again. We're going to be exploring a really fascinating topic, Heidegger's philosophy of technology.
Indeed, and I'm looking forward to it.
I guess one of the starting points is that unlike many people who assume that technology is an outgrowth of science, Heidegger pretty much assumes the opposite, that science is an outgrowth of technology.
Heidegger, beginning even in Being in Time, before his later, more explicit writings on technology, argues that man's relationship to tools precedes theoretical scientific thinking and is the ground of it. So, anthropologically speaking, of course, technology precedes science. And as we've discussed in a previous program on Heidegger, Heidegger believed that, even the most basic scientific enterprises like geometry require certain tools in order to elaborate their concepts. And science requires technology in an anthropological sense as its precondition. But Heidegger is saying something more fundamental than that merely anthropological claim. He thinks that there's something about scientific theorization that is always already trying to inframe and control nature, that there's an instrumental will involved in what appear to be even the most abstract scientific theories, which is bent on a domination, inframing, and control of nature, what he sometimes calls machination, going back to the Greek word mechane, which is the root of our word for mechanics, but also of machination. So there's a kind of psychological machination that is the source of mechanical enterprises in the history of technology.
All right, so let's unpack that a little bit here. So he just said that the idea of science that Heidegger is putting forth, and he puts forth this idea that science and technology inframe our reality. They create a kind of a limiting force, a kind of world picture. And he just brought up the ideas of science not being an understanding of objective reality, but really it attempts to control, to dominate, and to inframe. What this brought up for me was the idea of the fall of man from the Garden of Eden, right? So in the Garden of Eden, there were two trees. There was the Garden of Life, and there was the tree of life, and there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, man was supposed to eat from the tree of life and supposed to eat from the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But what happened, we know what happened, is that man, through the fall of Adam and Eve, and endeavored to take on the knowledge of good and evil themselves. What really happened there was there was a premature spiritual immaturity still inherent in man at that time, right? We don't know exactly what that would look like if man was spiritually mature, ate from the tree of life, and then was able to receive the knowledge of good and evil by eating from the fruit that was their dispensation anyways. So what happened is the fall of man is man took on his own knowledge of good and evil, projected his knowledge of good and evil onto the world. Science is an outgrowth, right, is a result of this idea that we are the end-all be-all of the knowledge of good and evil, of what is right or wrong, and what is important, and what is distinctive, and what man should do in nature and culture and building civilizations. So this idea, keep this idea in your mind as we listen a bit more here.
In other words, scientists today, many of them would say that, especially theoretical scientists, are purely in it for the search for knowledge. And Heidegger is saying something different, that science is really all about control, not knowledge.
That's right. Heidegger thinks that there is a kind of ungraspable dimension to nature, which he sometimes calls the Abgrund, the abyssal background. It is revealed that theoretical science is not a mirror of nature, but is a model building enterprise when you recognize the limits to the instrumental approach toward nature, where, nature is revealed to be ungraspable. One also sees reified, one also can see highlighted the practical or instrumental character of the scientific enterprise, that really our scientific theories are not mirrors of nature, they're models of the world. And they're models that we build for practical purposes. So this is one of the first insights that Heidegger has regarding the nature of technology, and that's that technology is ontologically prior to theoretical science. And so, for example, theoretical science in its quintessential modern sense, scientia, when the word scientia in Latin started to be used to demarcate what used to be considered natural philosophy or episteme among the Greeks, that moment with, say, Francis Bacon and Descartes, René Descartes, took place after the manufacture of the first complex tools and, clocks with very intricate gearworks in the Renaissance. And what you had in that epoch was the breakdown of very complex instruments that were much more complex in the various, gears and mechanically reproducible components that they incorporated. And so, when you had this breakdown phenomenon occur, the thinkers in the Renaissance began to see nature as a gigantic clockwork. And, the manufacture of identical replacement parts for these complex gearworks gave them, the idea that nature might work in the same way. And so you had a resurgence of the atomic theory and a thinking in terms of elementary particles. And in this way, you can see that it's a certain psychosocial relationship with technology that is the basis for the elaboration of concepts in modern theoretical science.
All right. So let's unpack that a little bit here. So man's relationship to technology in the scientific revolution, Francis Bacon, the 1800s has been accelerated, right? But this acceleration is an acceleration that is limited in its scope in terms of knowledge. We have a grasp of the fundamental material nature of reality, but we are completely clueless as to the fundamental spiritual nature of reality. So we have 50% of the blueprint, and we try to make, we base our reality on models that we build. This is an outgrowth of the pride, right? So what would it look like if we would have reached the spiritual maturity that was that was the goal for man in the garden prior to the fall? And what happened after the fall? So you had man being cast out of the garden, and he was now exposed to spiritual forces that he or she was unaware of because of the limited nature of perception of man's perception in a fallen state. So I would put forth that we are open to the forces of angels and demons, of powers and principalities that manifest themselves in our lives as thoughts and emotions. As you can think of an angel or a demon as an abstract thought, one that influences you through your desires in terms of the demon, right? The word demon is the root word in the word demonstrate, right? So what we're manifesting in this world is being filtered through our limited grasp of reality as a whole, through the nature of reality in terms of the big picture. What are the consequences of that, right? We are developing and building AI, which is going to be incorporated and conditioned and systematized based on our limited human knowledge of the nature of the world. The worst part is that the idea of a spiritual world or spiritual forces has been not even ridiculed, has been occluded, has been deleted from our understanding, has been relegated to superstition and magic. And that is the worst place to be, because there are spiritual forces that act upon us individually, within our families, within our communities, within the scope of our life. And if we're not aware, at least aware that this is happening, we are in a precarious place. And now with the acceleration of technology in terms of social media and what that has done to the psyche of our civilization, of our children, is profound and not even close yet to be understood. I mean, the symbol for apple is a fruit with a bite taken out of it. So when you have a phone in your hand with the Apple symbol on the back, that phone is quite literally the total partial, total knowledge of good and evil. You have access to the knowledge of good and evil in terms of history, of science, of technology, of the whole scope of human history is available to you in the palm of your hand. That is like giving the keys to the atom bomb to an 11-year-old, right? Think of the immaturity of a child, and would you entrust in that child the understanding of the nuanced relationships within a marriage, for example, right? So there are ideas in the patristic teachings from St. Maximus the Confessor, how there are different levels of being, well-being, and then forever well-being. I forgot the exact term, right? So we are stuck at a level of immaturity and we are unaware, right? So childhood, adulthood, there's a whole nother level of spiritual maturity that is ours if we follow the appropriate way of understanding the world with humility and with an idea of a God that has turned away, that we've turned away from, right? These ideas that have been ridiculed are central to any chance that we have of using these technologies, which are in themselves inert, right? It is the filter of good and evil through man that makes these technologies what they are. But there's also this insidious force, these abstract ideas or powers and principalities that operate on man, that man is unaware of. And that is where these ideas of the Book of Enoch, I'll play a little bit here from Jonathan Pageau talking about the Book of Enoch with regards to the demons that taught man how to use tools, how to build swords, how to conduct metallurgy, right? So these things that we are limited in our scope to understand, and we think that we do just basically on our own volition and sovereignty. Really, if you look at it, it isn't the case. And in the 20th century, we've come up with new terms like the subconscious or, primitive desires and repression, things of this nature, right? That we materialized the psyche, and we put it in the psyche in a straitjacket. The psyche means the soul, right? Psychology, psyche means the soul. Ology is the logos of the psyche, right? We have, again, put that in a materialist straitjacket and are at a loss as why the trajectory of our civilization seems to be coming to a head here. So let's see if we can listen in a little bit more.
I know we've had several earlier discussions in which you've pointed out that this mechanistic picture we have of the world is based on technology and not necessarily at all reflecting the actual findings of theoretical science. It may well be, as many of our guests on this program suggest, that the universe is more like a great thought than a great machine.
Yeah, let me just say a few words about that in relation to my most recent work. I thought recently, in recent months, in the past year or so, I've thought very deeply about the idea of a simulacrum, and the possibility that we're living in some kind of a programmed cosmos. And David Bohm.
Quickly, these ideas of programmed and simulated world, right? These are updated terms. What is a simulation? It is a false representation or a copy of an authentic world, right? Or a simulation or a program. These are terms that are new to us because of our relationship with computers, right? But we are in a fallen world. We are in a world that is foreign to us. We are in a world where we are not aware of the large majority of the forces that control us, right? So, there's not a lot of disagreement I have with him here, but I think that, there has been a lot of really good work done and with regards to the patristic understandings of these ideas. And I just wanted to make that caveat here.
Holmes' ideas about the holographic universe were a very early influence on me, and it's a way of thinking about nature that I've returned to recently. And in that context, I want to say a few words about the way in which I built off of the thought of Heidegger's that you just summarized in Prometheus and Atlas. In Heidegger, there is a sense that this ungraspable dimension to nature, which shows the...
So this ungraspable dimension, right? What happened after the fall? There was an angel, a cherubim, that was put at the wall of the garden to keep man from entering back into his world. Man's essence was in that garden, communing with God. They were banished from the garden, and there was a cherubim, an angel with a sword, put in front. So there's no re-entrance. You can think of that, of this idea of the ungraspable nature that is being discussed here.
Limits of the instrumentality of modern science and the technological nature of modern science, that this ungraspable dimension to nature has to do with biological processes. It has to do with a quality of organic life which exceeds the mechanical and is ungraspable by anything instrumental. And Heidegger here is under the influence of Wilhelm Dilthey, who's thinking about organisms and biology, is in the same school as Henri Bergson. It's a kind of vitalism. And in Prometheus and Atlas, I had put Heidegger next to Bergson in order to make a case that certain, what we would call psi phenomena, that you see in plants and animals, that you see all the way down to the level of bacteria, as far as the world of organisms, the world of biological life, the domain of biological life. The psi phenomena that you see when an animal can find its way back home across country when it's lost, or the kind of biocommunication that Cleve Baxter observed in plants, that this somehow was illuminating that instrumentally ungraspable dimension to nature that Heidegger was getting at.
So if the idea is that plants communicate in this psi way, in this higher level way, and that dogs do as well, right? Think about the perceptual and mental capabilities of man in regards and in reference to these levels of organization. Imagine the levels of perception and understanding that we would have if we had the spiritual maturity that we are still fighting for, and that we still actually can grasp.
In his writings on technology. And I recently had reason to reconsider that, because I think it's quite possible that instead of coming face to face with some, romantically conceived irrational in nature, a dimension of vitality, of life that cannot be mathematically modeled, what we're really dealing with here is what chaos theoreticians are grappling with when they talk about the irrational or chaos as an incredibly complex degree of order. And so, there are certain very simple equations that express dynamics in nature where, certain processes are highly sensitive to fluctuations in initial conditions. For example, the weather patterns. And what you find is that you can model such phenomena mathematically, but your mathematical descriptions of them do not have predictive power, at least not precisely predictive power. And in that sense, we are dealing with processes on a biological level that are in a certain way irrational. And I think that this does demarcate certain limits to the instrumental approach of modern technology, but not in the same mystically romantic sense that I think, is in the back of Heidegger's mind, that he implicitly subscribes to, and that's reflected in the parts of Prometheus and Atlas where I am putting his thoughts on technology next to Bergson's.
Well,
so again, another interesting correlation to make, right? This idea that chaos is not the irrational, right? Chaos is the super complex, right? It is the supra-rational realm. Ideas of randomness and ideas of chaos and complexity, right? It's not that these are just white noise that mean nothing. These are domains of being which we don't have access to, as he's saying here, with our instruments, because our instruments are outgrowths of our perceptions. They're outgrowths of our ways of being in the world, whether it's a telescope or the microscope or the car or the atom bomb or whatever it may be. We are under the assumption that we are piercing ultimate reality as we build our models. But as he's saying here, we are doing so not only with limited capacity and an unawareness of this limited capacity, but with forces that we are unaware of that have effects in our lives physically and biologically, emotionally and psychically, right? From this idea of powers and principalities, right? That situate themselves and manifest themselves in our desires, right? In our desires for wealth, for pride, for status, right? For material goods. We are highly influential. We are highly influential beings, right? So let's listen a little bit more.
I suppose it's fair to say that many of the modern developments in mathematics relating to chaos theory and catastrophe theory and so on came after Heidegger.
Yes, and see, the point is this, and we'll come back around to this as we go through other main ideas in Heidegger's philosophy of technology. There are basically a handful of them, and this is going to become relevant again when we get to the idea of the age of the world picture. But basically, the point is this, that chaos theory and fractal geometry is used today by computer programmers in order to model simulated worlds. Some of these computer games that have hundreds of simulated worlds in them are built up using the algorithms of fractal geometry. And
so the idea is we live in a simulated world, as he says here, and we are building models, simulations. So we are building copies of copies. And this brings up ideas from the French sociologist Jean Baudrillard, where he talks about the simulation and the simulacra, which is not a copy of an original, because we've lost access to the original, but a copy of a copy. And we're using these ideas in fractal geometry and chaos theory mathematically to build models of actual universes, of virtual universes, and trying to ascertain what kind of beings come through these modeled universes. But again, we're building simulations out of simulations, right? You're going farther from the truth, not closer to the truth.
And basically working with chaos theory. And so what you have is a situation where the programmers are designing these worlds. They're in a sense engineering these artificial universes, but they cannot predict exactly what form the evolution of artificial nature inside these worlds will take, let alone what the various entities that arise within these worlds will do. It's not precisely predictable. And so if you take that and apply it back to our world of lived experience, it means that you can have a cosmos that is both mathematically describable and also allows for free will.
Well, Heidegger seems to imply, with his focus on technology, that technology has I'm going to say it simply, the capability of transcending itself.
Yes, and this brings us to the second major idea in Heidegger's philosophy of technology, which is that there is something about the human being's capacity for self-transcendence that's related to the way in which technology is always transcending itself. Heidegger recognizes that, unlike all of the other beings in nature, humanity is lacking in an essence. In our case, our existence precedes our essence. You know, various other animals and organisms in nature have what Aristotle called a species being, a kind of instinctual pattern of behavior that's genetically hardwired. Human beings lack that. And
okay, why do we lack that? Why do other animals have this species being? This is an idea that Marx took up and explicates in Das Kapital, and that is the problem with capitalism is that it exploits the species being of the human being, but we don't have to get into all that. So what happened to the essence of man, that man is born first and then develops an essence? It's because we've lost our initial inheritance and we are grasping at our essence, not knowing that it's lost, it's available, but we are working from the assumption that man never had an essence in the first place. And we're building civilizations off of this premise, and technologies and tools off of this premise.
And, you know, this lack is also a dependence on technology that is even more primordial than the being of Homo sapiens. It was our crafting the simplest stone implements that allowed us to prepare food in a way, and also, you know, our working with fire allowed us to prepare food in a way that actually affected our morphological development, like, you know, the change in the shape of our jaws. And the dexterity of the human hand, which is something Heidegger makes a big deal out of, also would have evolutionarily been in a kind of feedback loop with the crafting of simple tools and the manipulation of nature using tools. So tool use, the most basic form of technological being, precedes human being, precedes properly human being, and brings it into existence. And so ironically, when we think about, you know, how all of these modern technologies, how all of these, technologies of the coming singularity threaten to dehumanize us and challenge the fundamental parameters of human existence, it's somewhat paradoxical, because without technology, we wouldn't have been human in the first place.
All right. So I want you to keep these ideas in your head. We're going to turn here to a video from Jonathan Paguea talking about ideas of tools and technologies from the Book of Enoch. And I just want to see if I can get this up here. Okay, here we go.
Extra-biblical tradition, it goes even further than what I'm telling you here. In the extra-biblical traditions, for example, in the traditions around the Book of Enoch, it's the demons who teach human beings their skills. So it's not just that Cain develops these skills, but it's actually fallen angels who are teaching the skills. And think about it in terms of what I've been telling you. Like we get all hung up about the images of fallen angels and all this, but think about the image I had about the mountain, right? Of coming down the mountain, how applied knowledge is taking something above and bringing it below, okay? And so it's not that strange to imagine that these angels, these principalities, these higher beings are falling, and they're the ones who are teaching the skills to human beings. Like, whether you think it's a legitimate tradition or not, just try to understand it. It can help you understand the story and why in the time of Christ these traditions were very prominent. So in the Book of Enoch, it talks about the different demons. One major demon is Azazel. And it says that Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. Now think of the metal part is really important. Very important. Because metal is digging in the ground. Remember the mountain. Remember this pyramid.
The top of the mountain is the garden from which man was banished. since the fall. And you can think of man existing at the lower levels of ontological being and reality, even though the angels and demons that are being discussed here have fallen as well, but they have fallen but are still at a higher level than human beings and human perception can ascertain, right? So this idea of the demons teaching humans to use tools, right? Think of this as we can speculate a little bit that the demons are using the humans to build their bodies in terms of artificial intelligence, right? I know this kind of sounds wild and is speculation, right? But look at the dehumanizing effects of social media like Twitter and what it has done to our fabric of our civilization, right? It's not hard to project how that will look and might look if we continue down this path with regards to artificial intelligence, right? And ideas, more crazy ideas here of the Antichrist, right? The idea of the Antichrist is not necessarily against Christ. The Antichrist is instead of Christ. So that will look like a savior that will be coming to fix all of humanity's problems with work, problems with distribution of resources, problems with war, famine, and hunger. If we build machines that are able to ostensibly save us, right? That is the false salvation. Artificial or the Antichrist is Christianity without Christ. It is this secular humanism that we are so full throttled in, and we're not even aware of the roots of this humanism. The very essence of humanism has been occluded, so similarly to the essence of man, right? So let's listen a little bit more here to Jonathan.
Metallurgy is digging in the ground, taking stuff from underground, bringing it up, and then using that, right? It's a very dark thing. And all the imagery around metallurgy in every culture is very dark. You have the image of Hephaestus, this deformed god in Greek and Roman myth that lives in Hades, that lives in this dark, fiery place and is pounding and making, and just think of a blacksmith in any, in any kind of fantastic story that you get, living in this soot and banging on metal and taking this ore out of the ground. It's a very dark imagery. So Azazel teaches people to make weapons. But he doesn't only teach them to make weapons. He also teaches them to make bracelets and ornaments and to use antimony. Now, antimony is very strange, but the reason it seems to me why he says to use antimony is because in the ancient times, antimony was a metal that was used to decorate the eyelids. So he's connecting metallurgy and weapon making with ornaments, with decorating. And so he says they use antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring and tinctures. And there arose much godliness, and they committed fornication. They were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. So why is ornamentation connected with this? Making something beautiful. Why wouldn't we want to make something beautiful? Now, ornamentation is the ultimate garment of skin. Is the ultimate thing that you add. You can think about it this way, and I tried to explain it. Think of someone. Why would someone need to wear makeup? Sorry to all the ladies. Like, why do you wear makeup? Right? You wear makeup in order to enhance your beauty. Okay? Right? So you put something, you add something in order to enhance your beauty. Now, if you push that a little further, right? And let's say you put on more makeup. You put on more makeup. Where's the line between enhancing your beauty and hiding what's there. Okay? That's the line, right? That's the line that I'm talking about. Okay, this idea of adding something in order to enhance, but then you're also hiding you're camouflaging what is there. You're supplementing in order to hide as well. Okay, that's the line that is going on in this whole game, and that's why the ornamentation that the demons teach, ornamentation, is related to making cities and making walls and weapons. Because why would you want a sword? You want a sword to enhance your strength, right? That's the same thing. Every technology has the same function. Every single technology has the same function. It's to enhance something, but it also can be a way to hide that which is lacking. The example I like to use is always Book of Matches. My ancestors had a lot of pain to start fires. Like, they suffered to start fires. I don't suffer. Just take out my Book of Matches. Here you go, I've got fire. But what do I do if I don't have that Book of Matches? Can I start a fire? I don't know how to start a fire. Right? My ancestors knew how to start a fire. If they didn't have a Book of Matches, they could still start a fire. It's the same for everything around us, right? We have cars, we can go very far, and now our whole society shifts. And now if you don't have a car, what do? If you live in the suburbs, you can't live without a car because the grocery store is too far away from your house. You would actually die of hunger if you didn't have a car.
What would happen if Wi-Fi and cellular technology was taken out completely? In terms of using this analogy of how the automobile restructured human relationships with regards to suburbs and cities, how has the internet restructured human relationships with regards to the virtual realities and social medias we are so entrained in and mesmerized by?
Okay? Trying to help you to think that way in order to help you understand the problem of supplementarity and the problem of craft.
All right, so we're going to kind of leave it there. I highly just suggest there's a lot more that I'd love to go through in this this discussion here with regards to Heidegger's philosophy of technology, but we're going to leave it there for time's sake. I want to leave you guys with a couple of questions to consider and some final thoughts here, right? So what was man's destiny prior to the fall? What does spiritual maturity look like if we would have kept God's commandment in the garden and, resumed our communion with God and reached full spiritual maturity, in a sense, to become like God, right? Not in a sense of we are little gods now in the century of the self, the 20th century, right? This is an illusion. This is the result of pride, to think that our technology and our understanding of the world will lead to some kind of utopia. The exact opposite is the case. What would the qualities, what qualities would the human experience of man and his or her, relationship to the world look like if we would have attained this spiritual maturity that I'm saying is occluded from our human experience? Now, the ethic and the system is to follow, and from my perspective, and I'm not even close, I'm not there yet, is the ideas of the Orthodox Church, which seems like a crazy thing to say, right? From a secular 21st century perspective. But if you look at the teachings of the fathers, right? And if man would follow the two rules, the main commandments Jesus put forth, of to love God with all your heart, we have excluded God from our existence. It's a silly thing for most people to say. It's mostly philosophers and theologians arguing about, transcendental arguments about God or whatnot. But to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor is the other, is any other person. To love your neighbor as yourself. If we follow those two commandments and we encoded what that means into our technologies and into our relationships, we would be, I would argue, much better off. And then I am attempting to return to the Orthodox Church, but I am not involved now. I am in a sense, excommunicated. Not really, but in a sense, right? So the idea of participating in the sacraments and the mysteries of the church, of communion, of the liturgy, right? These are things that I'm drawn to, and I am not there yet. But I feel that from what I've been feeling and being guided towards, that the experiences that happen in kind of an authentic Eastern Orthodox church are something that are indispensable. And I don't know, there's probably, and there could be, and there probably is kind of authentic, like from a Guénanian sense, René Guénon, there probably are other traditions that have kind of an authentic core that will provide a spiritual maturity. But from my perspective right now is that it's through Christ, it's through his teachings, and it's through imitating the life of Christ and loving God with all your heart and loving your neighbor as yourself, loving your enemies. When Jesus was being crucified, he said, as he was being crucified, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Right? They are unaware of the influence they are under. The mob is unaware of the influence, the mimetic desire that has overcome them, and they know not what they do. So I hope you guys like this video. Please give me some feedback. Please like and subscribe, and please check out these videos here from New Thinking Aloud and from Jonathan Paguea. Thanks for listening.